The Toronto Blue Jays have a big decision to make when it comes to the 2024 season. Now, they're in the middle of a playoff push. They know who their guys are, and Matt Chapman is one of them at third base. But we don't know if he's going to be there next year, and we're not quite sure if the Blue Jays are going to try to re-sign him just because of the internal options that they have. There's a ton of them. There's Aurelvis Martinez, there's Kevin Biggio, Davis Schneider to a certain extent, and Addison Barger is also knocking on the door. So we'll break down all the possibilities and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and this is a very interesting conversation that we're going to bring up here because Matt Chapman, if you were to tell me this in April, I would say you're crazy. I would say the Blue Jays should try and go ahead and give him all the money that he wants because he's been an integral part of this team, and he still is. I mean, he's still one of the main guys on this Blue Jay team, and he hit a walk-off the other day. You know, he brought the Blue Jays home safely, and he was a big reason as to why they've won a lot of games early on in the schedule. And his defense is just so good at third base that it doesn't matter who your next third baseman is going to be, he just won't be able to match up to Matt Chapman's defensive acumen. But Nick, now as we roll into the stretch run of the season, there's 12 games left here. The conversations are starting, and Matt Chapman, we're not sure if he's going to be a Blue Jay past this year. I don't know if a lot of fans want him to be a Blue Jay past this year, but be careful what you wish for at the same time because I don't know if the next guy in line is going to be as good as him at the hot corner.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting time. Like you said, Matt Chapman obviously got the big walk off the other day, but a lot of players are kind of coming up in the organization, and one we're going to focus on today is Aurelvis Martinez, among others like Addison Barger and Kevin Biggio. Before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,300, and we're super close. But Peter, the reason we're talking about this right now is for a few reasons. Matt Chapman is, of course, a guy who's mightily struggled as of late. Even a couple games ago, he got pinch hit for Kevin Biggio in the ninth inning, I believe it was, or whatever it was, and Biggio clutched up, but Aurelvis Martinez is flying through the rankings here, and he was named Player of the Week for the minors. The number 2 prospect hit 360 with 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, and 20 total bases last week, and hit his 28th home run back on Saturday or whatever it was, September 16th. And Peter, Aurelvis Martinez is a guy that we were pretty down on to start the year just because of the swing and miss potential, and really everyone who analyzed prospects, analyzed baseball, even like Ben Nicholson-Smith and those guys within the Jays organization. He had so much swing and miss at the start of this year, and he's really been amazing. Even ever since coming up to AAA, he's improved his approach. His strikeout numbers are going a bit more up, I believe from 20% to 27% ever since going up to AAA, but that's natural. AAA is a bit more polished pitchers and more veteran-type pitchers, but I don't know. Aurelvis Martinez is a guy that I don't see a way, especially if they don't sign Matt Chapman back, that he doesn't start the year at third base, or at least in the organization somehow, because he has an absolute cannon of an arm as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's time. I think it's time for him to make his big league debut. Obviously, not this year. It's not going to happen. But he's just been so impressive. And if you look at his stats over the course of the season, he's just gotten better. He's
There
gotten
you go.
better with every. Yeah, look at those stats. I mean, he's hitting around 273 in
Yep.
AAA this year with an OPS nearing 900,
It's
and
unbelievable.
he's just gotten better. You're saying the pitchers are more polished, but as he advances from level to level, he looks more
Yep.
polished. And a lot of people, including us, Nick, we forget that he's only 21 years old. And we were quick to push the panic button when he started the season hitting below 100. And we were calling him a non prospect. We were saying that maybe this is not a guy that we should be too high on. Luckily, we have Addison Barger, but now it's looking like Aurelvis Martinez is going to be the guy going forward. He's soaring up not only the Blue Jays prospect rankings, but all of baseball. He's top 70 prospect now, I believe, on most systems, even top 60 if you look even further, if you're a freak for some of those prospect rankings. So he's been just so impressive. I think he's going to start the year as the starting third baseman next year. His defense is never going to measure up to Matt Chapman's. I don't think anyone that ever plays third base will ever measure up to Matt Chapman, but they need another impact bat, and that impact bat is sitting in the minor leagues, and he's ready to go. He's just gotten better and better as the season has rolled along, and he's got the most home runs in the organization. There's no joke there. He's legit.
Yeah, and the question then, and the big decision they have to make is where do you put all these guys going forward? Of course, you have, I don't think the Jays re-sign, and I'm interested to see what you guys think in the comments, and you as well, Peter. I think we agree they probably don't re-sign Matt Chapman unless we get some sort of bargain deal because they have other places they need to allocate this money, especially with a guy who really did not play very well this year as a whole ever since the first month of the season in Matt Chapman. And if you replace it with a guy who's been mashing in AAA,
Right.
yeah, his strikeouts are up a bit, but you know. Matt Chapman strikes out a ton as well, so you're kind of it's maybe similar type hitters. Elvis obviously has a lot more power than Matt Chapman does at this point in his career, and I don't know. You had Matt Chapman, Elvis Martinez maybe starting at third base next year, Kevin Biggio slotting in at second, but then you had to find somewhere for Davis Schneider. Like there's a big logjam within this organization, especially if they don't re-sign a lot of their guys, and that's just because how deep the system is. So maybe they move one of these prospects like Addison Barger, who's had a pretty disappointing year given the hype that was coming out of spring training and after all the injuries and things like that. So it's very, very interesting. And looking at Matt Chapman's stats, and Peter, this is a guy who at once early, 2020, 2019, or high 2018 and stuff like that, was an unbelievable hitter. And he's not having a horrible year this year, at least at surface value, but he's been really bad since the first month of the season. Luckily, his defense, he still provided value, but it's at a point where if you're getting pinch hit for Kevin Biggio, and shout out to Kevin Biggio, he's having an unbelievable end of the season. He's playing himself into a starting spot next season. I think at second base, if Whit Merrifield goes, and we'll probably have another video at that in the future, but I don't know, Matt Chapman, although having pretty good peripherals, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I want to re-sign him from the Toronto Blue Jays, especially as he's, 30 years old, and he's probably going to want a 4 or 5 year contract.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be his last opportunity to go ahead and cash in. And I don't know if I'm ready to do it as a Blue Jay fan. If he wants to come here on a 2-year deal and remain a Blue Jay, then I'm all for it. I still think he's a better option right now than what is sitting in the minor leagues. As good as Aurelvis Martinez has been, as good as Kevin Biggio has been, he might even be in the conversation to be the starting third baseman next year for the Blue Jays. And I wouldn't be mad about that just
No.
because of the way that he's been playing. But I still think Matt Chapman is the better player out of all the guys that we're going to discuss in this video today. But who knows, man? Who knows? I think it's time to go with the youth movement here with the Blue Jays. We keep getting caught up in this World Series or bust type thing, but they still have a very young team. Apart from their rotation, apart from maybe a couple of position players that might even be off the books next year, the Blue Jays have a young core. I mean, Vladdy is 24, going to be 25 next year. Bo is going to be 26 next year. And just look at the success that all the young guys have had coming up. I mean, Davis Schneider has been a revelation. I think he's going to be the everyday second baseman next year for the Blue Jays. So there might be a logjam there. And the Jays have been hesitant in the past to bring up their hitting prospects just because they haven't developed any. But now is the time because you have guys coming into their own. You have Aurelvis Martinez who's really starting to figure out what kind of hitter that he's going to be at the next level. Addison Barger, I know he had a down year, but he was the best hitter in the Jays minor league system in 2022. And I don't think that player is gone. I think he's still there. He just had a really rough season when it comes to injuries. So you have a lot of internal options, not only to plug at third base, but even left field, center field, if Kevin Kiermaier walks, So you have all these bats coming up in the minor leagues. And I think it's time to go with the youth movement here. I'm not saying rebuild for the Toronto Blue Jays, but I'm saying embrace what your strength is right now. And it's your depth up the middle, it's your depth in the infield, and all these bats that you have in the minor leagues.
Yeah, and it's going to be the big question going forward, especially into the offseason. But I think Biggio has played himself into some sort of role, especially because he can play
Yeah.
basically every position aside from. He played even a bit of shortstop this year, 1 or 2 games when Bo Bichette was hurt, and we had different guys up.
I don't
So
know if I want that though.
no,
I don't know if
no.
I
So
want
it's
that.
going to be interesting. And again, we have this conversation for Whit Merrifield. There's no way that they re-sign Whit Merrifield. I believe they have an option for him. They probably decline it at around 19 million. There's no way they accept that, especially given the way he's finished the season. But it's going to be a very, very interesting next. I guess once the offseason happens, but even as we finish this season, seeing how Davis Schneider finishes, you got guys like Ernie Clement who's making an impact this year. He's a guy as well. I think ultimately the Jays are going to make big moves in the offseason, assuming they don't do anything major in the playoffs. And that's not under the question yet, as the Texas Rangers lost once again yesterday at the time of this video
Yeah.
to the Red Sox. And we're looking like we're going to get in a playoff spot. I don't want to jinx anything, but I don't know. It's going to be wild. Any quick final thoughts on this before we wrap up and hope for a good series against the Yankees? Because it seems like every time we're close and in the playoffs, we have a big choke job.
Right. Now, I just kind of want to gloss over the what a potential lineup could look like in 2024. And I want your thoughts on this as well, Nick. I think we can agree that Kevin Kiermaier maybe is the most likely to be back out
Yep.
of the three vets when it comes to Kiermaier, Whit Merrifield, and Brandon Belt. I think he's the most likely one to re-sign, and I think the Jays should go ahead and do that. So I think you're going to have Kiermaier in center, you're going to have Varsho in left, you're going to have Springer in right, but Biggio's going to fill in the outfield. Biggio's going to fill in at second base. I think Addison Barger's going to crack the big league club. I'm not sure where Espinal stands in all of this. I think he's probably going to be gone when it comes to next season. You got Davis Schneider in there as well, who's probably going to have an everyday role at second base. So you have all these guys that are going to occupy positions next year, and I'm just excited. I'm excited that these guys are finally going to get their opportunities with all these veterans coming off the books. And I wouldn't even be shocked if Kevin Kiermaier is not coming back. I know he's been a fan favorite. I know he loves his time in Toronto thus far. But I truly believe that it's time to go with the youth movement and with all these guys that have just been performing at an incredible level in AAA, and hopefully they could bring Matt Haig with them as well next year to be the new hitting coach of the Toronto Blue Jays. That'll be a big boost to a big jolt to the offense.
Yeah, and like you said, I think Kiermaier is definitely the guy that stays up. There's going to be a lot of questions going forward. I think every player that you name, you can make a case for making realistically the starting lineup in March of 2024. But I don't know. That'll wrap up the video. It's very, very interesting, and it kind of goes to show that some moves are going to have to be made just because of how many players we have that are capable of, making an impact. But we'll definitely have videos for that, and hopefully the Jays can take care of business tonight against the New York Yankees in a series that, I mean, at this point, every series is the most important of the year, but this one is definitely going to be very important, especially with the way the other teams are playing and the Texas Rangers collapse. Thank you guys for
Oh
watching.
yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow.